Welcome back to the Freedom First podcast. We are your hosts, Blaine Smotherman
and Eric Kern.
This episode is brought to you in part by Jeffries Firearms Training.
Shooters making shooters. For more information, contact owner Ronnie Jeffries on Instagram at Jeffries Firearms Training.
Are you looking for a wide variety of firearms, ammunition, and equipment? NAG Industries is a premium, local, veteran, and family-owned company in Bakersfield, California. They offer expertise in sales, repair, enhancement, and service of a wide variety of firearms, ammunition, and equipment with a focus on law enforcement and government agencies. For more information, you can visit them on Instagram at in.a.g_industries, through email info@nagindustries.com, or you can give them a call at 661-364-9726. NAG Industries. Pride in what we do. Welcome. You have now entered the Freedom First podcast,
where we have conversations with some of the most interesting human beings on the planet.
People who live and breathe in Freedom First mentality. It's such an honor and a privilege to welcome on our guest today, who is a former wide receiver at the University of Southern California, who personifies the qualities of tenacity, perseverance, and that never quit mindset. His story is very similar to Rudy from the movie Rudy, where he had to walk on and, go through a lot of obstacles and different colleges and all sorts of hurdles to actually make it and eventually join the prestigious University of Southern California football program. His story will help anyone, reach goals and overcome obstacles. It was such an honor and a privilege to have him on our show today. I'm so grateful for his time, and I hope you guys enjoy the show. Please welcome Mr. Chris Caulk. All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we have on an amazing guest, and, just listening to his story, the inspiration, the perseverance and everything he went through to become a walk-on at USC and all the trials and tribulations. I welcome today Mr. Chris Caulk.
Thank you for having me on, Blaine.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And, the first thing, and I'm not comparing it to, the first thing that came to my mind when I started listening to your story and kind of, just learning a little bit more about you was Rudy from, being a Notre Dame fan. I don't know if you've heard that before, but I'm a huge Notre Dame fan. I'm sorry.
No, it's all right.
Sorry to say that, but I kind of that connected with me right away. So just the perseverance and overcoming obstacles and making it. So
I've definitely heard that one before. I've definitely gotten that one before. But the worst part about this kind of comparison is that I've never seen the movie Rudy.
Really?
And no, it's really bad that I haven't. I really need to watch it because I've been told, I think on probably 3 or 4 shows in the last probably like 3 weeks, it always starts with the same thing. Your situation's a lot like Rudy's. And I've never seen the movie Rudy. I obviously know like the plot line, the storyline of it, but I've never seen the movie Rudy.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely a lot of similarities there. Well, anyways, I appreciate you joining. And, on the Freedom First podcast, we have a little segment called the Freedom Minute. We just kind of get the conversation warmed up and flowing and get everybody fired up and kind of going from there. So the first question I'm going to ask you is, it is called the Freedom First podcast, and it's just a podcast and kind of a mindset about freedom first for all people. And what does freedom mean to you, Chris?
That's a good question. I think that freedom is inevitably the idea that what you can do and have liberty to do it, choosing what you want to do. And I'm not a libertarian per se, but I think that the idea that you can and freely and morally and ethically interact in a way that doesn't necessarily take rights away from others, but also feeling like you have the ability to express your innermost truth or self. So I think that's what freedom means.
Awesome. I appreciate it. And the second question, what is the scariest or most embarrassing moment of your life thus far?
I know this one. My first day on the scout team at USC. I've thought about this because I didn't have an answer until I actually thought about it. And like, okay, this is definitely the most embarrassing moment of my life. Granted, it wasn't embarrassing because like it was a lack of preparation or anything. It was just embarrassing because I got reamed. So my first day on scout team, I had no idea about what the protocols were or what any of the plays were or any of the concepts or formations or anything. I'm sitting in there in what was known as run fits. And that's basically you just line up in formations and you kind of just give the first team defense a look as to what the formation will look like. So they're all calling out these formations and I'm sitting there like, what the going on? I have no idea where to line up. And the linebacker coach, he just loved to rip into guys. So I came to find out later that he did it. And then after he ripped into you, he'd turn around and start laughing. But, he just ripped into me. He was like, what high school did you go to? And I told him this high school and he goes, well, yeah, it shows because you went to a terrible high school. And I was like, oh my gosh, he was just ripping me apart in front of everyone and practice hadn't even started yet. So I felt so terribly, like my hands were numb, like all that kind of stuff. It was a rough fucking go. I'll tell you that for sure. That was the most embarrassing moment.
I could imagine just in front of everybody, you got these All-Americans and
yeah, it was bad. It was bad.
The third question, being an athlete, we see so many, the Herschel Walkers, the Bo Jacksons of the world. In your opinion, who's the greatest athlete of all time?
It's a tough one. I think that, let me put it this way. If we're talking about athletics, like I think LeBron's a pretty gifted specimen of athlete. But if I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm not a basketball guy by any stretch, in any sport, I would want Kobe to have the ball in the last play of the game. So no matter what it is, no matter what sport, if somebody had the Kobe Mamba mentality, that's the kind of athleticism that I would definitely want in the last ball, like last play, last drive of the game. So I'm gonna give the props physically to LeBron, but mentally I'm gonna say it to Kobe for sure.
Yeah, and I feel like, did you grow up a Laker fan?
I did. I mean, I was never a big basketball guy, but I mean, I always loved the Lakers. I'm from San Diego, and there was no team really, so it was just the Lakers. Everybody loved the Lakers, and I mean, that was like everybody loved watching the Lakers too.
Yeah. No, I grew up a Laker fan as well, and I feel like the longer, or the more time that passes since Kobe's passing, I feel like we keep learning these stories and hearing these stories of how he was just a good guy and a good person. Just having that mama mentality, just a good dad, everything, great friend. So, those stories just keep coming out. Even after his death, and it'll continue for a long time to come.
Yeah, Kobe's a legend, no doubt.
All right, 2 questions left, and this is one I ask all my guests. If you could sit down and have a conversation with anyone throughout the history of the world, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Shit, that's a good question. The entrepreneur in me wants to sit down with one of the titans of industry, one of like the Rockefellers or the Vanderbilt, Carnegie, one of those kind of guys, men, titans of industry, just created what we know to be America today through capitalism.
Right.
More recently, I'd say Elon, because I think that Elon Musk, for those in case you don't know who Elon is, I really do like him as a visionary. I really, really do. I think he just thinks outside the box, and I think that kind of vision plus the work ethic that he puts into something, I think he's a very wise guy. So I think that today, Elon, and then if we're talking about dead, I'd definitely say one of the titans of industry for sure.
Yeah, it'd be incredible, especially to sit down with those the founders. I mean, you look at those guys, the Rockefellers, Carnegies. I mean, they're the founding of this country. Through, like you said, through capitalism and just growing what we know as the entire system today. And then sitting down with Elon would be incredible. Just a mindset, the entrepreneur side as well. But like just trying to get into his head. I don't know if I'd want to get in his head, but he's a unique guy.
He's cool. No, he's definitely unique for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so you're a young guy. You've persevered. You've played Division I football. So to all the, not just the kids, but to anybody listening, if you could give one sentence advice about how to live life and be successful, what would it be?
One sentence. Be intentional and never give up. I will say that for sure, because there are so many things that will be thrown in your face. So many roadblocks. And if it's in the pursuit of a goal, I can tell you and speak from experience, and not granted, I'm only 24, but I did accomplish this goal for SC, and I'm set on other big time shit right now. And things just tend to appear. Roadblocks just tend to appear. So you just really got to be intentional and just recognize that there are going to be roadblocks in front of you. You just got to get up, go around them, or go over top of them, or run straight through them. So that was what I would say for sure. Be intentional and do not give up.
Yeah, I think the intentionality of anything, right? Because I mean, people, you could talk about a plan and come up with these great ideas, but unless if you're not intentional about something, the chances of success is much less likely. So I like the intentionality of that.
Oh yeah, you gotta be intentional, because it speaks to I don't mean to go off on a little tirade, but it speaks to like commitment for sure. Because when you're intentional, you're being intentional about a particular goal or a particular process. If you're going to be doing that day in and day out, you really hold yourself accountable as one of the major components of what will inevitably drive you to get to what goal or process or dream it inevitably becomes. So yeah, intentionality is a huge part.
Thank you, Chris, for answering those questions. The Freedom Minute, just kind of get us fired up, and gives a little bit of insight into your life before we begin this conversation. So, kind of going through your story, like we talked about before, I really seen the perseverance that you've gone through. And this is a story that, especially young athletes should listen to. It's going to, help them along the way, especially those kids that, they're, because everybody wants to play D1 football. Everybody wants to go to the league. Everybody wants to do this and this, but it takes that work ethic, and you've shown that. So let's kind of start off, growing up. You talked about growing up in San Diego. What was your childhood like? Did you grow up playing sports from an early age? How did it all come about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I sports were a pretty big part of my life. Excuse me. For as long as I can remember, I was never one of those travel kids, those club goons who was going to every tournament for baseball or whatever. I was never playing like 4 sports at a time. I was always sticking with baseball. I mean, San Diego's a pretty good spot because it's always a really nice temperature all year round. So you get to play in winter or fall, so you got fall ball, and you're never too far away from a field. So you can always just pick it up and start throwing the ball around. But yeah, I mean, my childhood was pretty typical. I mean, I'm from San Diego, like I said, and you just kind of have some friends. I mean, you're always playing sports at recess, and, just going to school. I mean, everything seems pretty copacetic.
Right. And so you grow up, like you said, not playing, you weren't a basketball guy, but you're not playing AAUs, the club ball, all that stuff. So when did you, when did you first get into football? Was it earlier or later?
So football, as far as my football career goes, it was definitely later. It wasn't until my senior year of high school.
Oh, wow.
But I mean, yeah, no, it's really late. But as far as my love for the game of football, it definitely started early. I mean, my dad was throwing me passes in the front yard when I was probably 4 or 5 years old, catching over the shoulder passes in front of his bed at one of our old houses. And I mean, one of the first things that I remember, or not remember, but one of the first pictures taken of me in my childhood was me probably no bigger than this, sitting right next to my dad. He's reading the LA Times sports page, and it was USC had just beaten Notre Dame or had just gotten into the Rose Bowl or something like that, or UCLA, one of those games. So football definitely had its roots, but I didn't start playing ball until I was outside of flag football, but real competitive football, I didn't start playing until my senior year of high school.
So what took you so long to join a team and start playing in the high school level then?
Excuse me. I was always committed to baseball. I really loved baseball. It was my sport. And what the catalyst ended up becoming was I got cut by the baseball team, my varsity baseball team, my junior year in high school. And I was devastated by it because it was, like I mentioned, it was my sport. I absolutely loved it. I thought I could go to college for it and that kind of stuff. So it was definitely a huge shock to me that I didn't make it, and it was really devastating. But at that same time, I decided to not, be soft about it. And the next day, I got into the gym and started working out a lot. So that way they wouldn't be able to say no to me next year as far as baseball is concerned. But the irony is, within about 3 weeks, I see football kids walking in to the high school gym coming out from spring ball. And I see these kids walking through the weight room, and I'm like, these kids aren't all that. Like, if I committed myself to learning the game and being a receiver, I mean, shit, I'd always had good hands and I'd always played outfield, like that, tracking fly balls. I mean, no different than tracking passes. So I figured that if I committed myself to learning and playing football, that I could, maybe I could do it, and I could do it. So not too long after that, I sent an email to the head football coach of the high school, and I told him, like, look, I obviously lied about my weight and height a little bit and what positions I could play. But
I think everyone lies about their height and weight in high school.
Yeah,
especially the small guys.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, look, right now I'm every bit of 6'2.5", 6'3", 225. At that point, I was telling him I was 6'3", 215, which was just a complete bold-faced lie. I was probably 6'1" and about $185, but I'm sure he saw straight through that. But I told him, like, look, if you give me a shot, like, I'd really love to come play football for you. And I kind of had a conversation with him, and he told me, Chris, all right, come to summer workouts and we can get started. And that was very much the beginning of my football journey.
So you join in, they're going through spring ball, you join in the summer. And what high school do you go to?
I went to Cathedral Catholic in San Diego, and now it's actually become quite a program.
Right.
But I'm not super high on Cathedral, only because I've had a lot of negative experiences as far as like kids who went there or certain coaches. I have nothing but good things to say about some of the coaches there, but some of the coaches definitely did love to shit talk me, especially when I was in my grind phase to get to SC. So there are some positives and negatives to every school, just like anywhere. But Cathedral Catholic was a high school, and kudos to them. They played really well this season. I don't keep track on them like that, but from what I've heard, that they're pretty good.
Yeah. So what was that like going to is it all boys school?
No, it was co-ed.
It's co-ed. Okay. So what was that like going to a Catholic high school?
I didn't really get into my faith until later. So, I mean, I'm into it now, but at that point, like, I wasn't Catholic. I mean, I was Christian, quote unquote, only like very back pocket Christian. But it was all right. I mean, it was just like typical high school. I mean, as a guy, I mean, you're not really having to worry about dress code as much. I mean, the worst that they can get you for is wearing the wrong slacks or something. I mean, I'm sure if it was a girl, it'd be a little bit different because they're having the skirts and the measuring and all that kind of shit. So was it weird? A little bit. I mean, you're getting taught classes by like Catholic priests. So, I mean, there are certain religion classes that were like, okay, I mean, you're hearing it from the horse's mouth, but it was definitely an interesting experience, but I wouldn't say it was like strange, so to speak, at least from my perspective. And I was mostly a nerd for first 3 years of high school. So it was, I wasn't really going out of my way to be super social or anything like that either.
Okay. I always thought that just interesting going to, from the public to the Catholic schools and, the Servite high schools of the world and the St. John Bosco Preps, all those. But okay. So, so you play you go to summer ball and, play your senior year. So what was that like? Your first year of playing, I guess, competitive tackle football is your senior year of high school. So what's that year look like for you?
So the first day that I get there, summer workouts, everyone's kind of looking at me like, Chris, what the hell are you doing here? So it wasn't that warm of a welcome, just because everyone has been together basically since their freshman year.
Right.
Like, what do you think? You can infiltrate the brotherhood? It's like all that kind of shit. And I'm just like, all right, guys, let's just take a step back for a second. Anyway, so I had a great time in summer workouts, just kind of going in, just learning the game. And then, you start picking shit up and it goes quickly and you start winning reps and it's a lot of fun, but everything was going really well. I mean, I was getting reps, special teams, receiver, defensive end. It was all sorts of fun. And I was like, damn, this is legit. Like, I really think I can play ball. But within my first scrimmage as a high school football player, like, and it was the first, not like inter squad scrimmage, but it was like the first scrimmage of the year against two other teams. I tore my ACL and meniscus in my first game as a high school football player. So that's kind of how the door, so to speak, was shut before it seemed to be shut. I should say that before it got opened.
So did you miss your whole senior season, or?
Yep.
So missed your whole senior season. So you're still with the team. You're still kind of doing everything, seeing everything. So how did that help you your senior year? I guess being on the sidelines, seeing everything. Did it give you a different vantage point?
It definitely did, and it definitely gave me the opportunity to know that. Actually, let me phrase it like this. When I came back for my senior night game and I got in for however many snaps it was before I really hurt my knee again, I kind of just felt like I knew I couldn't give up sports or football, for instance. I just knew that there was more in the tank. I knew, and I don't know if it was a faith thing or God telling me, like, at this point, like, Chris, you're not done yet. But I remember getting onto that field. It's like looking around. It's almost as if I was in a bubble. I couldn't see in any of the stands. It almost just seemed like it was black and it was only you and the guy in front of you. So I would say that experience kind of set my course towards playing at the next level, inevitably end up being USC, and I wasn't going to let it be anywhere less than that. But at the same time, it definitely set the course for my inevitable journey, being on the sidelines and then knowing how much, like, okay, I can't be done. So if that answers your question, then that would be it.
Yeah. So you miss your whole senior season. You kind of play a few snaps in your senior night, and did you have that confidence that, like, you obviously still wanted to play, like, right? You weren't going to give up. Did you think you could play at the next level? Like, what was that?
Absolutely. I never doubted myself, Blaine. I never did. And I never will, because I'll always bet on myself. And I think that once people really recognize that they're so much more capable than they perceive themselves to be, I think that people really can recognize that the world is their oyster. Like, they really can go after everything that they want.
Right.
And the only thing that's stopping them is them. So to that point, whether it be kind of delusional at that point, I mean, playing 6 snaps and tearing your ACL your senior year and wanting to go play at USC, that's a little bit batty, isn't it? It's a little bit crazy. Not too many people are thinking like that. But I just saw myself where I could be and where I would be after I put in all the work to get there. And I mean, whether the people who doubted on me believed in me or not, or just saw me for where I was, my reality just hadn't caught up to where I knew I could be. So yeah.
Yeah. Do you know who David Goggins is?
I love Can't Hurt Me. One of my favorite books I've ever read.
Incredible, right? So he has that 40%. There's a 40% rule, I think. Like,
oh yeah,
the hardest you work, you're only like giving out 40% of your capability or what you could actually do.
I wish I had read that book while I was at SC or in the time prior. I mean, granted, my grind was crazy, but at the same time, like, having that 40% rule, and then the time where you think you're really tapped out, in reality, you've got plenty more left in the tank. So I love that book. Yeah. David Goggins is a machine.
Dude's an absolute savage. Just like, I remember like hearing him on, different podcasts, Joe Rogan and, all kinds of different podcasts. And, reading the book, listening to the book, it's like, this dude's he's built different for sure.
Yeah. No, he's great. I like him. I love David Goggins.
Yeah. And it's just great, his story, right? And it's just so, like, you could look at the physicality, but he's so mental, like, just on a different level.
Yeah. Dave, he's a nut. Yeah. He's great though. I love David Goggins.
It's like, what kind of guy? So, like, I remember like reading that story about he was gonna run like an ultra marathon, and he didn't like know shit. He didn't know shit about one. It. What's that?
Yeah, is it the 24-hour one in San Diego?
Yeah, like he wasn't prepared. hadn't ran. I think he was just coming off an injury or some shit, and then like he just goes for like 24 hours.
Yeah, that was in the book. Yeah, that was the one right before the 24-hour one. That was the one in Las Vegas. I'm sorry, I've got a kind of a crazy memory, so I do remember that. He was always like, yeah, I just had my shin splints or my whatever, and like I was with my mom and my my mother-in-law, and I was planning on walking it with them, but next thing you know, when the horn went off, I just fucking booked it and I won the race or whatever it was. And yeah, I love that guy.
Yeah. No, he's definitely inspirational. Just everything about him is like, damn, I need to step it up a little bit.
I love the way he talks to himself too. He's like Goggins. Like the alter ego of Goggins versus David Goggins. He loves like Goggins. Once I go into Goggins, man. Once I go into Goggins, it's over for a motherfucker.
Yeah,
he's great. He's great.
And the those videos he posts on Instagram, like the running videos, are the best.
Oh my gosh, I love that one. And then I'm not sure if you remember this, but a few months ago, maybe a year ago, some guy like tried to fake him into getting some merch or something like that. And I'm gonna crack up just saying it. He goes, he busts the guy, and then he does his Instagram video, and he goes through this whole soliloquy of shit, and then he goes, moral of the story, don't be a dick, stay hard. And then the video cut. It was hilarious. Hilarious.
Definitely a crazy human being. So kind of going back to your story, you believe in yourself, you have a lot of confidence. And so what's that journey from, graduating high school, you're done with your football season, and eventually getting to school at USC, not even to football yet, but just getting to school.
Yeah.
What's that process look like?
It's 3 rejection letters from USC, 3 junior colleges over the course of 2 years, and a lot of ancillary family, social, whatever aspect of adversity you want to look at, you got. I mean, look, I was blessed to be from a position like where I didn't have to duck when I walked out the front door, but there were times where, I mean, I don't want to go too much into it because I don't know if I'm ready, like, personally to talk about it, like, publicly, just because it was like there were some really tough times, but there are some real struggles in there, man, like, in a lot of different capacities. So, and that's kind of how I got. Ooh, shit! I almost dropped my laptop. That's kind of how I got to where I got, at least as far as I am today, because a lot of those struggles, they change you. And I'm probably talking to a lot of people on here who've been through a lot and had a lot of struggles. And my struggles probably pale in comparison to some of your viewers. But at the same time, like, if your journey is worth it and the end, so to speak, like your goal and your why is worth it, then I'll tell you what, all those struggles, all those roadblocks, and all that shit that you endure in the middle of it, it's just temporary.
Right. And so you're going through struggles, and you went through several junior colleges, and what's that? You finally get accepted to USC. So what's that feeling like, and how long did it take you to eventually get into SC?
It took me every bit of those 2 years of junior college. And let me preface it by saying, like, I had really good grades. I had, on a 4 scale, I had like a 3.8 out of junior college. So it wasn't like I was just jerking around, not taking school seriously. Like, school was a hugely important part of my life. So it wasn't by some happenstance that I got into SC. Like, I worked my ass off to get there. And I definitely say I'm a very smart individual too. So it just so happened. I think that there is some divine kind of I don't know what to say, like influence, but because it just wasn't my time. And the reason I look back on my life, and I'll get to the answer of like what it felt like in a second to finally get accepted to SC. But the person who I was in those times of rejection wasn't the person who would even considerably becoming like somebody who would be able to play at USC, whether it was in skill or maturity or whatever, So, but to answer your original question, I think that once I remember getting accepted to SC and being with my dad, and he said, "Chris, I'm going to open up the letter," because the decision was virtual, and he opened it without me, and then he kind of comes to me, he's like, "Chris, come here," and I remember sitting with him and on this couch that we were at, and he just kind of like, "All right," I opened this up and I saw the USC letterhead, and I remember looking at it, and he says, he opens it and pulls it down. And I just scan for, I'm looking for, and it says, we want to welcome you and to admit you to the class of 2021 or something like that. And or this acceptance class. And I was just elated. And this was well even before football, like my elation from football came in. But just getting into the school of USC was something that I'd always wanted ever since I was like probably 3 years old. So it was a real full circle kind of deal and a really, really awesome experience.
So what did you go to USC for? What was your major and focus?
I was pre-law at USC, and my minor is real estate development.
Okay. So
yeah,
and so you go into SE, you start taking classes and attending, and what did you go in as a junior, or what year are you?
So I think inevitably I would have been a junior, but so junior college units sometimes don't transfer all the way. So it took me 2.5 years more to get finished at SC. Like I finished the normal amount or a semester more. I think it was a semester more. But yeah, just because I was short a couple units from junior college.
And so you get on campus, and what made you want to? I mean, did you still have that drive of I still want to play football that entire time?
That entirety of that time while I was at junior college was almost entirely committed to becoming a beast at football, becoming a freak. I was working out with the receiver coach 3-4 times a week. I was working at the gym every single day. I was eating right, and my mom was a personal chef. So she was cooking for her clients, and I was living with her at the time. So it worked out great where she was making me these high protein, great meals all the time. And it worked out really, really well as far as timing would go. But at that time, when I got onto campus, I was so committed to playing at USC. I knew that I was going to get there. I just needed to get in the door. And I got in the door prior to starting classes per se, but it didn't all kind of transpire until a few weeks into the semester.
So how did you make contact and like get into the coaches or the recruiter's ears and start actually making a connection? So
it's kind of the age-old adage of begging, borrowing, and stealing favors. So there are some people that I'm I owe a lot to. Shout out to Steve Fillet. He's a huge one of the best people. I owe him big time. He was just like, he always says, Chris, you were gonna get there. I just opened the door for you.
Who is he?
So he is a friend of my dad's, who is a really close with a big time Orange County head coach for a high school football team. And Steve goes to the guy and he says, hey, this kid, I know him. He's a really good athlete. He wants to walk on at USC. How would you advise that he does that? And he goes, okay, if this kid's the truth and he's legit as he thinks he is, I can get him a number for a guy who's in player personnel, which is basically like saying, okay, you've got a guy who's just like this normal guy at SC, it's an SC football program. It's not a head coach. It's not an assistant coach. It's not like operations. It's not even that. It's like, it's not even recruiting. It's like these guys are just there. They get the numbers and they field calls all day long. So I get this, and he says, okay, if this, like, I can get you his phone number, but that's about it. And then Steve comes back to me with that information. And I told him, look, Steve, the last 2 years I've spent saying that all I need is a shot. That's the only thing I need. And he said, I'm like, look, if this is my shot, then I'm going to take it and I'm going to make it. So he gave me the number of the guy in player personnel. I shoot him a text and I told him who I was, my height, weight, desire to play at SC, yada, yada, yada. And he comes back to me and I finally get in touch with him after a few different times trying to get in touch. Excuse me. And I text him when I'm on campus for orientation, and I go meet with him, and I'm in the communications building bathroom, just repping out push-ups, trying to look a little bit more juiced. And I get in there and I meet with him. He says, all right, Chris, we'll give you a shot at an open tryout in the spring, which was like 6 months away. And I said, look, if that's what it's going to take, then that's fine with me. Turns out 2 weeks later, I get a text from the player personnel guys like, hey, Chris, can you get all this paperwork done for us? And don't leave the city until after we text you on Friday. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? So I get all my shit done. I handle all the paperwork. I go see him, and then he comes to me and says, all right, Chris, you're walking on and trying out today. Your tryout is today at 5 o'clock after practice. So yeah, that's kind of how the story began as far as my actual involvement at SC.
So not much of a notice there. Just you're trying out today.
Zero, absolutely zero. Basically, some saying, Chris, all right, here's your shot. Prove you can hang.
So you go to the tryout. How did it go?
Tryout went well. You know, I'm hypercritical of myself, and I always think like, okay, if I maybe got out of this route a little bit faster, or I went over this bag a little bit quicker. But you know, I ran my routes. I tried to get in and out as quickly as I possible as far as routes were concerned. You know, I did all that, and I just knew that if I put myself in the best position to be the one that they bring out of that group who was trying out, I knew I'd be straight. Because if I could be the best out of that group, just kind of trying to break it down to a more micro level, if I don't have to worry about being better than Michael Pittman, who was the star receiver at that time. I don't have to be worried about being a starting tight end or whatever it is. I don't have to be worried about that. If I can put myself in the position on a micro level to be the best out of that group who was trying out, then I'd be fine. And that's kind of how I broke it down to myself.
Speaking of Michael, we actually Michael Pittman's tattoo artist is a friend of ours down in Bakersfield. We actually had him on the podcast. It's been a few months ago, but he's a big tattoo artist. But he does all Michael Pittman Jr.'s tattoos.
Dope.
Yeah.
Mike's got some cool ink. I like Michael's tats. He came in with a shark one day on his leg. He's got the clock or whatever, like right there. Michael's got some cool ink for sure.
Yeah. So you were trying out with other people then? There's a group of you guys?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Group tryout.
So you get done with the tryout. Did you feel like you did well? I mean, you said you're hypercritical of yourself, but did you feel like you did well and you had a shot at that point?
I think I did. Like I said, I feel like if I walked away from that tryout knowing that I was the best guy out of that group. Because what happened was, like, when we started getting into route running, I'm like, all right, it's time to show these tools up. Like, and I ended up becoming all three of the guys in that group, myself and the two other dudes who they brought on, big time high schools, big time OC high schools. One of my good friends, Grant, shout out Grant Jones, just finished his last game last week. He De La Salle offers a lot of different spots, and he just got the opportunity to walk on. So all three of us on that team on that group could ball. But I was like, I'm gonna really turn it up when I get into route running, because that's my shit. So I mentioned, I knew that I was gonna be the best guy out of that group, and then I was just gonna try and show it through route running and receiver drills.
So you get done with the tryout. How long did it take until they informed you that?
It was the most nerve-wracking 4 days of my life. I mean, I was sitting on pins and needles waiting for these guys to get back to us, because they said that they would get back to us in 3 days. So I'm sitting there thinking to myself, if I get this close to my dream, the dream that I have bet everything on and endured so much shit from people or from God, or I mean, like tests from God or whatever, I mean, that's not necessarily scripturally correct, but whatever. At the same time, if I had dealt with all this shit. So I knew that if I got that close to my dream and didn't accomplish it, I would have been so sick. I'd have been sick to my stomach. So that's why it was so nerve-wracking for me, more specifically.
So you get it. Is it a phone call you get, or
the text message?
Text message.
And I've told this story a whole bunch of times, but I'm gonna try and not well up when I tell it right now. It was a Monday after the Monday of Labor Day, and it was my brother, my dad, and I. We were at a drive-through Mexican restaurant in Orange County, and I need to find out the name of this restaurant, and I need to go there, because it really, that was one of the days that really changed my life forever. We were sitting in a drive-through restaurant, or just drive-through, going, waiting with all the other people who just ordered burritos or quesadillas or whatever it was, and I'm sitting there at 7:42 p.m. sitting on Instagram or whatever it was. And I don't remember exactly what app I was on, but text message notification comes across the top of my screen, and it's from this guy, and I want to blow up his spot. I mean, he's not there anymore, but this guy, and then I put his last name as USC football. So it's from this guy at USC football, and first line I barely read. It was like, "Hey Chris, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm like, before I can even think twice about like, oh shit, I need to take a breath before I read this. I mean, this is an important message. I just kind of touched it. I just like, all right, that. I was like, looked at the message and like all within the same breath. I'm sitting there, like all tense in my chest, just like looking at this fucking message. And I scanned the message for it, and I didn't even look at it. And I reread it like 3 times after I got the result. But the result basically said, Chris, finally able to connect with coach. We want to welcome you to the team. And I'm like, no way, no way, no way. And my brother and my dad were like, what? I'm like, I just made SC. I just made the SC football team. I got out of the car, ran up and down the freaking driveway probably 5 or 6 times. And I'm just jumping and screaming and hooting and hollering. And it was really such an amazing thing. And all the people probably in front or behind me, like, damn, this guy's lost it. But in reality, it was like, I had just made USC football. Like, I think that reaction was more than justified in the context and everything that I had gone through.
Yeah, I can only imagine the feeling, just putting all that effort and waiting and finally making and joining, the one of, if not the most sought after college football program, in history. So
I appreciate that. Yeah.
You get the text message, and what's that, how long did it take? Did you join the team the next day, or how?
It took a little bit of time to get all the paperwork done and all the compliance and all the physicals and the cardiogram, echocardiogram, and all that kind of shit. But it didn't take too long, not too long at all. But I didn't join the squad the next day, but it was a pretty quick little turnaround. Just would I like to have had it been the next day? Absolutely,
right.
But wasn't too long. Wasn't too bad.
Okay, so you make the team, you get cleared to play, and you finally are a part of the USC Trojans football program.
Yeah.
So
it's still crazy to hear. It's still crazy to hear. And I don't think it'll ever not be.
Yeah. No, I'm just going through the story. I'm so curious and just asking questions right now. But so you become a part of the team. Did you join that season, or was it what?
No, I joined that season.
Okay.
Yeah, 2018.
2018. Yeah. So you joined the team. So what is it like? That those first initial kind of meetings. You're on the team. You're part of the program. Practices.
Yeah.
What's the entire experience like?
All right, I don't want to be too long-winded in this, but there's a lot to say here.
Yeah.
So if you'll just indulge me, I'll tell you everything.
Absolutely.
First thing that I remember doing is the equipment manager, Todd. Shout out to Todd. I like Todd. He plugs everybody with all the stuff. I mean, Gear Thursdays, you're getting new shit every Thursday. So that's one of the components that's crazy about playing at a school like USC. I remember going in, him just giving me my number, giving me like cleats and gloves and all this kind of shit, and then him taking me into the locker room. And I remember walking up this like little thing, and then going into the locker room, the big fucking doors, like with like probably the size of, I mean, I can't do it on here, but these big doors, like, and these big handles, and in the middle of them, there's just this big red SC, and they open up, and it just closes, and it like double locks, and there's a fingerprint to get into the locker room. And I'm walking down this little corridor with Todd. He takes me to this little pod, and I look up. I can get emotional talking about it, but I look up and I see Chris Caulk, tight end, number 41, is fucking in USC. I'm like, I am playing at USC. Like, I accomplished this goal, and it just hit me like, it was so crazy. Like, all the shit, man. Like, it just hit me, and I was like, holy cow, I'm playing USC. But anyway, so that first day, I get all my shit, and I'm just kind of hanging out, getting the feel for everything, meeting some of the guys. First meetings come up, and I'm like, I have no idea where to sit. And it turns out that everyone has assigned seats. And I didn't know that at that point. So I'm kind of just bopping around from seat to seat as these fucking guys file in. And I finally find a seat, and they give it to me. And like, all right, here's your seat, Chris. It's going through the meetings and all this kind of stuff. No one really knows me or anything. And my old position coach at tight end, Kerry Colbert, comes up and he goes, all right, Chris, stand up and introduce yourself to the room. And he goes, I basically introduced myself, and I told him all about like where I'm from, what I did, yada, yada, yada. And that first day, I ended up going out, running routes with the tight ends, making plays. It was a beautiful day. It was really a peak experience. But there's just so much to talk about, dude. Like there's just so much shit we could go on and on and on. And I'll try my best to remember some of my favorite experiences as we talk about them. But going and playing at a school like USC is, in my opinion, is everything it's like dreamed of and cracked up to be.
So you go through all that, and like you said, you're playing with All-Americans, you're playing with obviously, future NFL superstars, you're playing with all these guys that are going to go on to not just become football players, but everything, right? This is one of the hubs of the world, right? USC, yeah. Southern California. You got guys from all over the place playing there, and you're a part of it. What was the initial part, being, I guess, a student athlete? Because all of a sudden, you're a student, and then you add the athlete part on top of it now. So now, you got double, you got two lives going on, two things going on, because you still got to do all that, the academic stuff. So what was that? What was that process? Did you kind of know what I guess you knew what you're getting into, but was it everything you expected the student athlete part of it?
I would have just about done anything to play football at SC. So as far as balancing time management, I think that was a territory that I more than welcomed. So like it was, look, being a student athlete, there's a lot of work involved, no doubt, because you get to the facility 6:15 in the morning, you're not leaving until it's dark out. So you deal with a lot of that kind of stuff, and you've got to make sure schoolwork's the priority and getting that kind of stuff done, no matter how busy or swamped you may be with football or school, or with whatever, you just got to make sure that your shit gets done. So it can be overwhelming at times. I never really got overwhelmed, but that's why, there are resources for kids at SC who do get overwhelmed, as far as like academic advisors and then tutors and who they can set you up with and that kind of stuff. So for me, it was something that I welcomed, because I'll tell you what, that was a trade-off I was definitely willing to make. Being a little bit more busy with school and playing football, I was like, all right, hell yeah, absolutely, bring that on. Like, that means that I'm playing at USC, and I'll tell you what, that if I'm doing that, then I did something right.
So at USC, what's the when you were there and all the athletes still there, what's a day like for a student athlete?
All right, starts typically pretty early. So in season, I'll give you an in season day. In season, you're getting there for weights, and you're doing weights 4 or 5 times a week. I did 5 times a week because I was a walk-on. First, you get there like 6:30 for your lift. There are a few different times that you could go in, but 6:30 you get there. Right after that, you do your lift for about hour 15. Then you've got mandatory breakfast right whenever you're done. And then you got to go in there. You got to show the strength coach, one of the strength coaches, your plate, and, making sure that you're eating, because you got to have a certain weight, and you got to make sure that you're not losing a whole bunch of weight when you're in season, because that's inevitable in and of itself. But you got to sit down, have your breakfast upstairs. After that, you're going to class. After class, like during, some guys got class at 8, some guys got class at 12. As a pre-law student, so I typically had classes in the morning, and they would kind of just be within that like 9 to 1:50 time frame. So I would go in and do all my classwork, and after my classwork was done at 1:50, I had meetings about 2:15. So your first meeting is a team meeting. It's generally pretty brief. You've got it for about 30 minutes, and depending on what day it is, it's pretty introductory. Is on a Monday, you're kind of just introing who you're playing. For instance, if we're playing Alabama, or you're playing Oregon, or whoever it is, you're kind of going through like who's their 2 deep, who's the starter, who's second string, what do they do well, what do they do in this situation. Then you go into more specific meetings, then you go into special team meetings, which is another like hour or so, hour, 2 hours, or hour 20. Then you've got offensive meetings, and then position meetings right after that. And then right around 4:30, 4:45, you're going out, you're coming downstairs, everyone's getting ready for practice. You're getting dressed out depending on what the dress of the day is, whether it be full pads, shells, spiders, which is just like kind of basically like almost like I don't know how to describe it, like almost like foam pads that you wear underneath your jersey. There's not a lot. That's not a lot there. It's just to make sure that no one's like running
It's
into
like
each other.
like 7-on-7 passing league type shit.
Yeah, basically, it's basically like a faster version of a walkthrough, and that happened on Victory Mondays, which is after we'd win. And yeah, Victory Monday. Anyway, so after you have your practice, depending on how many periods it is, basically, I mean, 24 periods. That's basically I think that's 2 hours exactly. And then after that, I'd always stick around, and one of the student managers or one of the other teammates I would have throw me passes, and you're getting out of there at like 6:30. So you're out of there at 6:30. Then you've got to go get changed or go see the trainers, and then after the trainers, you go and hot tub or whatever it is. If you got rehab, you got to do rehab and all that kind of jazz, or see the doctor. And I've had 2 knee surgeries, so I have to see the doctor every now and then. But after that, you go shower. Then you've got mandatory dinner upstairs. You've got to check in. You've got to have some dinner. You can get it to go, but I mean, most of the guys sit there and eat it. You have dinner. Then after that, which is about 7:30 or 8, you're headed home. And then that's kind of when your school starts, unless you have like study hall periods in between your classes, or on a day where you don't have as much stuff, or guys who needed that extra help or wanted that extra help. I mean, it wasn't really it didn't really matter if you wanted to have a tutor, you could get one. They would have a study hall with academic advisors or whoever the tutors were. So, and they would get out there later. I mean, it's mandatory for certain guys, but I'd say my day really is kind of over at around, I'd get home sometimes 8:30 or 9, 8:30. I'd say 8:30 is probably fair. Okay. It'd be really late if it was 9.
Yeah.
So I'd typically say 8:30 for sure.
So that's a full day. I mean, you don't got too much.
Yeah. It's a commitment. It's a commitment. Sure. It's a commitment.
So when you were there, who was the head coach? Clay Helton was.
It was Clay Helton while I was there.
So how did you get to? How was he? What was he like?
I have nothing but good things to say about Clay Helton. I really do appreciate his leadership. He really, really cared about every single guy on that roster. And there's a lot of schools where that's not necessarily the case, especially with walk-ons. But I am forever grateful to Clay Helton for allowing me to make my dream come true. And a lot of people really, really disliked him. But at the end of the day, even USC football made a post after he got fired. It was like, thank you, Clay Helton, and all these reasons why. And I'm like, you have to be a really special dude when you get fired, and then the program that fired you is posting saying thank you.
For sure.
So I mean, he was just a bang up guy. I love Clay Helton. I talked to him after he got axed. I sent him a text and I talked to him and just said, Coach, thank you so much. Like, I really don't know if you know how much it meant to me. And him and I talked for a little bit, and I told him, look, I've got him. Him and I have a little bit of a deal. When our first film gets released, I'm going to invite him to the premiere. So I've got a little bit of a deal with Coach Helton right there. So, but yeah, so I mean, I have nothing but good things to say about Clay Helton. He's an awesome guy.
No, he seems like a good dude, like just a genuine guy.
Hmm.
So
by far, yeah, absolutely.
No, definitely. So who were you playing with? You mentioned Michael Pittman Jr. Who else were you playing with at the time?
That receiver room was unbelievably deep. Unfucking-believably deep. That was the wide receiver year USC was.
Aguilar there was, or is he?
No, that was
late?
A few years before me.
That was before. Okay,
that was before me.
That's right.
So that first year, when I think it was my last year actually, that room, like when everyone was talking about, okay, who's wide receiver you? It was between SC and Clemson. That was my year, and that room was top to bottom so nasty. So nasty. So at the top, you've got Michael, who's obviously playing for the Colts right now and just tearing it up right now. He's kicking ass. You've got Amon-Ra, who's playing for the Lions now. Scored a touchdown on Sunday, walk-off touchdown. You've got Tyler Vaughns. I think he's with the Steelers right now. Then you've got guys like Devin Williams, who's starting at Oregon right now. He transferred from SC. Munir McClain, wide receiver at Utah. Kyle Ford, John Jackson, Brew McCoy, 5-star, went to Texas or SC, Texas SC. Who else is in that room? Drake London just won today, all Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Year, and hadn't played in 3 games because he hurt his ankle. Definitely should have been a Biletnikoff winner, in my opinion, because he was the best receiver in college football. I mean, that room, and even like every walk-on, Zach Wilson, myself, Jack Webster, and I might be forgetting a few, and if they're listening to this, I don't know if they are. I'm sorry if they are, but that room was nasty from top to bottom. So, but on top of that, too, you've obviously got other guys who were studs, too. I mean, Porter Gustin, you got JT Daniels, Georgia now. Yeah. Who else is on that fucking team? There are a lot of guys on that team, man. I'm forgetting, defensive guys. Austin Jackson, first rounder to the Dolphins. Elijah Vera Tucker, first rounder to the Jets, I believe. There were some really, really good guys on that team for sure.
Who was your OC?
My first year it was T. Martin, but they asked him to go just focus on receivers midway through my first year, and then he quit and went to Tennessee. And my second year was Graham Harrell. They brought in the air raid, and that was who it was through my last season at SC.
Okay. So, recently, obviously, what are your thoughts? Lincoln Riley coming to SC.
I think it was the best decision that USC could have made.
I agree.
1,000%. They needed it. I cannot emphasize this enough. They needed somebody exactly like Lincoln Riley. They tried the air raid as far as the Graham Harrell air raid is concerned. They tried the Orlando defense. They needed to stop tiptoeing around the park and get in. Just go, all right, we're bringing in an A-list guy. We're going to drop in a couple or 10 million, 11 million bucks a year on a coach. They needed to do that because all the other things and that SC had tried just didn't work. They tried to kind of play Moneyball with I liken Moneyball to it because it was kind of just a rethinking of a way of kind of try to think outside the box. And props to them for trying to do that, but they needed someone who was just going to come in, change shit up, and just know who's a certified winner, and just have him come in and just do his own thing there. That's what they needed more than anything.
Yeah, and
they did the right job.
And Lincoln Riley, there's probably not a better recruiter in the country. The guy can recruit, and you're sitting in Southern California. You're sitting in a hub of
oh yeah,
and you shouldn't be losing guys to to UCLA and all these other programs. Those are your guys.
No, that's the God's honest truth, dude. Because I've always said this: if USC, mark my words, and I'm going to stay by this. When SC's popping next year, and the year after, and the year after, and the year after, and next thing you know, we're becoming a dynasty again. Not a soul, not a freaking soul, not a 5-star in the country or in Southern California will go to Oregon or UCLA. I am calling it because everybody is going to want to go to USC. It's going to be just like the Reggie and Matt days.
Yeah.
When Oregon was kind of just up in their own world with the whole Eugene thing and with the Nike thing. And granted, they've got some swag, no doubt. They've got some serious swag up there right now. They're fast, they're agile, and they are freaking good. But mark my words, when SC is good again, there's not a soul who will want to go up to Eugene and play football. It's going to be USC ball again. I'll tell you that for damn sure.
No, when I seen it, I was like, that they hit it on the money. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to keep those guys. You're always going to lose a few guys to Alabama and Georgia, but there's been a lot of guys leaving, and Southern California guys leaving to go to the SEC in the last decade.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Look what we've seen just in the week and a half that they brought Lincoln on. Yeah. Guys have been 3-4 stars have been decommitting from SC. 5 stars have been decommitting to Oklahoma. SC has been getting all sorts of looks. People are going to come to USC in this transfer portal year, and I'm calling that too. But it's just the standard has been raised at USC, and it's freaking awesome that it has.
No, it's definitely a bright future. Looking, I'm a Notre Dame fan, but it's still cool to see. Just I'm from California, born and raised here, so it's still to see these programs in California. But
I hate to say it, but out of all the teams that we played, I disliked Notre Dame the most out of all of them.
Oh yeah, I feel like
I hate to say it, man. Like I don't know what it was. I mean, I don't need to go into it, but I just really, really disliked Notre Dame, and I'm not trying to get into a whole debate about it, but because I was we didn't beat Notre Dame once while I was there,
right?
So yeah, I mean that might play into it, but at the same time, I really, really dislike that fucking team.
I'm excited to so they hired Marcus Freeman, the defensive coordinator. I thought that did the right thing.
Yeah,
he was a player. So? He was a player's coach. I mean, like all the players were like advocating for him, like on Twitter and social media. So
did you hear about how short the meeting is when Brian Kelly left?
Yeah,
2 minutes, 2.5 minutes. That's like That's unconscionable.
It's sad. It's sad. Like he's there for a decade, and like the guy just pretty much no one really. I mean, kind of just left out the back door.
1,000%. No, you're 100% right. You're 100% right. He just bounced, fly by night, pineapple or Midnight Express type of shit.
And you notice Notre Dame's pretty much they weren't celebrating him at all after all that.
No,
like
I wouldn't either.
No, I wouldn't. Yeah,
that is such a terrible bedside manner. Like you left. Like have some class about it. I saw one guy who recorded a Snapchat story or whatever it was, and it was just so general. There was no emotion there. He basically said, I'm packing up my shit. The jet's waiting at the airport, and I'll see you guys if we play you in the Final Four. Like, that's basically how it went.
Yeah. But if you look back, though, he kind of did similar things at Cincinnati a little bit and like some different places. It's not the first time he's kind of done things like that. And the crazy thing is, I seen some of the meetings at LSU, and it wasn't like, he wasn't like this crazy welcome. Like I've seen a lot of like the faces at LSU, and you're kind of like, I don't know, we'll see. But hey, whatever.
We'll see.
Things always, I guess, work out one way or another.
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see.
So you're playing at SC. How was it? I mean, just the whole experience. I know it's a lot, but like just coming onto the field and being playing with all those guys and just being in that experience, in the Coliseum.
It's as cool as you would imagine. I remember running out of the tunnel the first time. I just remember being so like amped, just running on adrenaline, that I remember blacking out from getting onto the field for the first time to remember like praying in the other end zone. Like I was that amped the first time running out of the tunnel at the Collie, and I'll tell you what, it never gets old. It never gets old. But it is so damn cool. Like you're going out to dinner and you're wearing your USC football gear out. And people are looking at it, and it's so damn cool. You're walking around, just the city feels like it opens up. And LA is such an amazing city. I love that city, man. But it's like you almost feel like you're walking a foot taller. And you're walking around campus, you're on your scooter and you've got your athlete backpack and you're going to class, you're going, and next thing you know, you're going back. All right, I've got practice right now. And you're in this mode, and it's almost like euphoric. And then you've got Saturday game days in the Collie where you're catching passes and warming up in front of 60,000 people, and you're flexing with one hand snags and just doing all that kind of fun shit. And it was an amazing, amazing experience. And I don't mean to go too far off, but that's also partially why, like, how important it is to like be so committed to your dreams, because sometimes when you have these dreams and they have like these impacts that mine had for sure. That's why I'm trying to impart on a lot of different people that if you kind of endure the shit and you kind of wear out the storm, this kind of stuff can be sitting for you, waiting for you if you ride out, put your best foot forward and work day in and day out. These experiences are going to be there if you put your best foot forward and just continue just to work your shit out all the time for a goal that only you can see.
Yeah, and what would you like? What would you kind of pit all that on? Like, just was it growing up, like your parents instill all that into, like just the perseverance and that never quit, or was it a coach or a mentor? Like,
Definitely, I think I'll definitely, I think it's a few different things. So I think that I think I've always kind of been that person. Like when adversity kind of strikes, the first thing that I do is kind of try and fire back at it. For instance, like I got denied by the high school inevitably wanting to, and he said, "Chris, you have to." At this point, let me give you another, like an example. So I was always I was kind of a dipshit in school for the first probably 7 or 8 grades of my life. I was kind of just like slacking off, really didn't care. But I didn't get accepted in the high school right off the bat, and they said, "Chris, you got to go to summer school." And I was like, you know what? I'm not going out in summer school. I'm going to commit myself and snap my fingers basically one day. And I just went full bore into studying, into class, paying attention, doing all my homework to the best of my ability. And each one of my classes that I was struggling in went up by at least 20% in my grade. I went from like C's, a couple, maybe a D in like 8th grade to like, you've got to try to get those kind of grades. But, I went from all C's, B's, and then a D to all A's and 1B. So whenever that kind of stuff happens, when, you know, the heat's on, I fire back, so to speak. And I would say that that comes probably a little bit inherently, but at the same time, I'll give credit to my parents because my mom's work ethic is second to none. Like I see her for like one of these kind of people who just literally just does not know a stop. Like she is all the time. Like she's 24/7. And then I'll give credit to my dad too, because my dad's like, he's in entertainment and he's a film director and he has that kind of visionary dreamer kind of vibe. So he has that kind of thing, that visionary dreamer thing, plus my mom's work ethic. I kind of took what I need from both of them and I committed it to myself because I definitely believe that my no quit tenacity comes a lot from myself, but I was also going to work with my mom when I was like 2, 3 years old. And I always would watch her just be relentless in her pursuit and her work and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's a few different aspects, but yeah, those are the 3 components that I would chalk it up to for sure. And glory to God for that.
yeah, because I mean, you see all these people, right? And like, I feel like everyone's got a purpose and a why behind, like successful people that have made it, right? They always have a purpose. They always have a why or it's something they're striving towards, right? There's a purpose behind it. So, I mean, you kind of briefly, you know, talked about that growing up and stuff like that, but was it faith-based? Like, or what's been that, like, that purpose of that why, like you've done everything that you wanted to play football, that you wanted to be successful? Like what's that, I guess, that life's mission or that purpose?
So that's a good question. It's not something I got really, really clear on until recently. And like I said, my freshman year of junior college, I got into my faith for the first time really in my life. And that's not to say it's going to be easy all the time, because I can speak from experience and tell you that it is not going to be easy all the time, especially as far as your faith journey is concerned. You're going to have doubts and you're going to have all that kind of shit. But for me, I think that my purpose has a lot to do with leveling up and kind of being that advocate for people. Like I want my name and my voice and my impact to mean something. Like all these people, like, yeah, I want to get successful to be rich and all this kind of stuff like that. And I think that it is so surface level and so shallow. I want to be successful because I want to use that to help others. I want to use that wealth and that impact and that kind of platform to help kids in the inner city learn about financial literacy. I want to create programs for people in communities that may have not had a lot of capital investment in there, so that way they can level up too. I want to use that wealth to go and spread the gospel and help people in other countries who may be struggling with things like hunger or water and that kind of stuff. And I think that there's a lot more that comes with that as you begin to inevitably think, okay, this is my purpose. Like, and I got really, really clear on it because for a while I had no idea. I had no fucking idea. But the reason I've been going on all these podcasts is for a similar thing. You know, I've been trying to help kids in particular. Kids may or may not be like myself, who were doubted by everybody, who didn't have a whole lot of friends, bullied a little bit for sure, and made fun of like crazy. Like I want to let them know that those kind of kids, they may be in the popular circle, but they're not in the winner circle. And there is a huge distinction between the popular circle and the winner circle. Those kids who talk all the shit and make all fun of you, they're not stopping you, dude. Like if you want to get after something, fuck those kids. Like don't listen to them, because had I listened to them, had I listened to all those kids who laughed at me and said, Chris, they invite kids to walk on a USC, you've got zero shot, or all the kids who laughed at me to my face and behind my back, I would not be on this interview with you right here tonight. So I think that is utmost importance for me to use what I have, and in my future to use what I will do, to use it for a positive impact, to not only inspire kids, but to do great things in the world beyond just the ancillary benefits of using your wealth for good.
And I appreciate that mindset and that outlook. Being of service, right? Like sounds like just hearing your messages, you want to live a life of service, right? And live a life of giving. Now that you've obviously moved on from USC, playing career, education, what are you doing right now? What's your goals going forward? What are you currently involved in?
Sure. Excuse me. Sorry, I've been having the hiccups because I had some pasta right before, because I had hardly any food all day. I was working and doing all that kind of stuff. I have to keep it kind of low key, only because we haven't announced publicly yet. But I'm in a leadership program of a really awesome entertainment company. Really cool projects. Got some really awesome alliances that I've got to be on the hush hush about right now. But we've got some really, really cool properties. Like I said, a lot of good things on the horizon. Whether they do with, I'm like I mentioned, like I'm never going to doubt myself in anything, whether it works out with them or not. But I really do believe I'm on the right path, so to speak, no matter how many obstacles or curveballs get thrown into my way.
Awesome. And I'm looking forward to just seeing, what you do come about, and following your career and everything else you're doing to give back and help out. And what there's a lot of kids and younger people that listen to this podcast, and whether it's athletes or students or people just trying to overcome struggles. You've persevered through different obstacles and different struggles throughout your life. What would you tell younger people or just anyone going through a struggle or trying to reach their goals? What would you leave these people with to live a full life, live a successful life, and be able to persevere and overcome obstacles and different things?
I'm not going to try and sound too generic, because I think everyone's struggle entails different things. Because a lot of people deal with psychological stuff, and a lot of people have like mental health, and I'm one of the last people to like sit there and just scream mental health at you, but it is important, and it can be debilitating. Some people have financial struggles, some people have emotional struggles, athletic, physical struggles. Like there's a lot of different stuff that could entail. But if I'm kind of looking at this perspective, because I really dislike just the ideas of like, okay, yeah, have faith that it'll work out, because although the fact of the matter that is very true, I feel like it's very impersonal for me to say that, or for someone to say that to me. At the same time, I have no idea what people are going through. But what I will say to people is that if you continue to persevere, always putting your best foot forward, getting after what it is what you want, whether it be as small as getting up in the morning, going downstairs, walking around the block, or whether it be as big as, okay, I'm trying to put together $1 billion kind of company, or I'm trying to make this amount of money, or just I'm trying to impact this amount of people. No matter what it is, you need to be deliberate and intentional about every single thing in your life. You need to be so committed. Because I'll tell you what, there are so many people in this world who are trying to get what you want. And I hate to break it to a lot of people, the world owes you nothing. The world owes you fucking nothing. And I'm sorry, I try to keep my expletives to a minimum, but this is so important to say. If you go through this world thinking that, going through your life that like, okay, I've always had it sheltered. I've always had it bubble wrapped or whatever the situation is. I will tell you, you are in for a very fucking rude awakening when the status quo changes. So what you need to recognize is that only person who's really looking out for you is you. You may have some family and friends and all that kind of stuff who you love and who actually really support you, but you need to really make sure you look out for yourself and get after what you really want. Because I guarantee you, nobody is going to give it to you. Nobody will going to give it to you. And if somebody does, that will be taken from you so damn quickly. Because if somebody, let me be completely clear. If someone were to have given my spot to somebody at you, like a receiver role at USC, if some spoiled kid had gotten that role and I got brought onto that team and it was either me or him, he may have had the connection to get there, but I will tell you what, he didn't have that dog that got him there like I did. So I guarantee you that if it's him or me, oh my gosh, I guarantee you I will take that boy's soul, just like David Goggins would say. So it comes down to that kind of stuff. You got to be so committed and you got to develop that dog in you. So be committed, be intentional, be a savage, and don't let anybody tell you what you can or can't be. Because the only person, aside from God, but you have the free will to choose what you want to do in this world and what you want to do in this life. And do not let people tell you what you can and cannot be. And that is a beautiful thing for me to close on.
Wow, you got give me the shivers over here. I mean, and you're living proof of all that. And those that are listening, I mean, you're hearing it from someone that has overcome and persevered through these different obstacles. So, Chris, I thank you for sharing that and sharing that insight that you've learned from that others could use and apply to their own life. The last thing, the last thing we always end with is the freedom fighter of the week. This is someone, or it could be more than one person that has helped you or helped getting you where you are today, has inspired you to be the person you are today. So, Chris, who's your freedom fighter of the week?
That's a good question. It's tough because I give all glory to God in my situation. I always have and I always will. But I'm not going to be that guy who's like, oh, it's got like no matter how much I believe it to be true in this, I think that in person, like on this earth right now, I'd have to say it's my brother. My brother and I are best friends. It's always just been him and I. Like, no matter what happens in family or whatever the situation is, like him and I know that we're solid. My brother and I have never gone more than like 45 minutes of being mad at each other. He is literally was one of my closest people aside from my girlfriend, whom I love very, very much. Like he is the person who in this world knows me better than anybody. And like, I love him to death. Like I really do. And I would say that in those times where I'm getting too emotional, like in those times where like nobody believed in me, like he was the guy who would like go and throw me passes and stuff like that. And I would definitely say that my brother was definitely the freedom fighter of the week for me. Thanks for sharing that. And where can people follow you, whether it's on social media or, you mentioned you got some awesome stuff coming up maybe soon in the future. Where can people follow you? Where can they see your work and everything else? Sure. So my Instagram is the same as my TikTok. I don't post on TikTok, but there are some good videos on TikTok that I did post about kind of a thumbnail and abbreviated version of what it took to get to SC. So if you want to if you've gotten to this point in the podcast and listened to all the way through and you still want to see okay, what's the short version of what I just told you? Go to my TikTok, listen to the most recent video I posted, which was a few months ago. It's basically my journey to get to SC. And that is at the Chris Caulk, and it's the same as my Instagram. Definitely check it out. I mean, I don't want to say I'm posting platitudes, because I'm not, but if I do see something that I think that not only I have experienced myself, but I think that somebody in my position 5 years earlier could have benefited from, I'll throw that on my story too. And I think that will be I'm obviously not trying to plug myself, but at the same time, I think if you follow me there, you won't be disappointed.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And thanks for just providing insight into, listeners' lives, and maybe even if it's just one person, right, inspiring those the future generations to persevere and work hard and do all the things that they need to be successful. So you're living proof of that, Chris, and I appreciate you joining and taking the time to be with us today. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Have a great evening.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You too.
Thank you for listening to this episode. We appreciate you and your support of the show. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and leave feedback on Apple Podcasts.